Goodrich TA radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Dodge, a performance revolution, an American revolution.
The last weekend of July was a busy one in the world of motorsports, and we're here to review some of the action. Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Jenkins.
And I'm Larry Newber. The Winston Cup Series at Talladega has meant lots of speed and great racing in the past, and certainly that tradition was continued last Sunday.
Well, it wasn't the fastest, but it was one of the hottest NASCAR races ever in terms of temperature and competition. The thermometer read 110 degrees, the track temperature even higher, when the 40 starters began the 188-lap race on the world's fastest speedway. A mandatory yellow flag and pit stop were ordered to check tire wear on lap 17. Inside Bobby Allison's car, Richard Petty blows an engine, begins to slide down the banking, barely missing Buddy Baker. The car continues to slide through the grass, hits the wall, then a mud puddle. Incidents in the pits involved Darrell Waltrip, who was hit by Rick Wilson. Dale Earnhardt led a while and ran up front all day until his engine blew on the 150th circuit, and Dale also ended his race with a graceful pit pirouette. Bill Elliott was also a leader but had tire problems, then retired with engine difficulties. The most serious accident came as Harry Gant and Phil Parsons headed down the backstretch at over 200 miles an hour. Gant is sideways. Jeff Bodine is involved, so is Waltrip. Before it's over, Cale Yarborough and Buddy Baker also fall victim to the incident. This restart late exemplifies the great racing all day, four abreast sometimes. The race had 48 lead changes among 26 drivers, among those who led Sterling Marlin, Rodney Combs, and Rick Wilson. Ricky Rudd, who suffered not only from the heat but also from a flu bug, sought relief from Rusty Wallace, and Rusty did a great job taking the four to the front. He's behind race leader Bobby Hillin here on the final lap. But Bobby Allison's in trouble. Rick Wilson and Jim Sauter are taken into the wall. Joe Ruttman is in the wrong place at the wrong time. Kyle Petty, Marlin, and Davey Allison somehow get through. A replay from inside the Allison car shows just how much abuse and physical punishment a driver endures in such a crash. Bobby, however, escaped without injury. The race back to the yellow and checkered is won by Bobby Hillin Jr., his first Winston Cup victory. Tim Richmond second and Wallace for Rudd third. The next Winston Cup event will be live here on ESPN on the road course at Watkins Glen, New York, Sunday, August 10th at 12:30 Eastern.
This was also the weekend of the second ever Talladega IROC race. The Unsers, senior and junior, had won the first two IROCs this year, but obviously this the home court of the NASCAR boys who won that other IROC race here in '84. A squeaky clean start portended the way the race would go. Very little passing, extremely limited maneuvering, but everybody remained AT&T sharp all race long, meaning they stayed in touch. European Jochen Mass pulled to the inside once and tugged fellow countryman Hans Stuck along, but they never led. Really, there was only one move at the race, this about a third of the way in when Cale Yarborough, going where they said the IROC cars were not at their best, high. This is lap 32 of the 38-lap race. Talk about your evenly matched cars, and not much happened on the last lap either until just before the finish line. Cale holds on, Harry Gant passes Elliott for second, Waltrip is fourth, Mass outstanding is fifth, and Dad Al just beats out his kid for sixth.
The ARCA Permatex 500-kilometer race, the same day as IROC at Talladega. Dave Simcoe in yellow was pole sitter at 2:01. There were four that qualified over 200. Rick Jeffrey brought out the first caution. His windshield is high in the air while he slides through the tri-oval. Bill Venturini and Grant Adcox had a spirited duel for a great part of the race, but 2 laps from the finish, Bill breaks an oil line, spins to the infield, and Adcox wins the fastest ARCA race ever, 173.947 miles an hour.
NASCAR's Grand National Sportsmen back at one of their home bases for the Bobby Isaac Memorial. Interrupted by rain Saturday, the race concluded Sunday. And on the restart, Brent Bodine had the Thomas Brothers 00 up front, followed by Jack Ingram with regular Jimmy Lawson in third. Going in, Ingram had a number of things going for him. The circuit's leading money winner, $117,000, tied for the most Busch Series career wins at Hickory, and tied for the most wins of this year in Sportsman with Darrell Waltrip. Well, there are no more ties. After a side-by-side fence with Bodine, another score for the Ironman.
Coming up, Japan Power wins over German might in Deutschland.
But German forces overpower Japanese muscle in America. At the last Formula One Brands Hatch, the Williams Hondas embarrassed everybody when Nigel Mansell won and Nelson Piquet was second. But at Germany, others seem to be catching up. The McLaren twins, Keke Rosberg and Alain Prost, normally race setup conscious on the front row. And Senna's Lotus has been qualifying fast, but this week's new Renault engine was said to be fuel economical and fast. Another first-turn scramble. Theo Fabi moved over on Stefan Johansson, who bounced over into new Ligier horseman Philippe Alliot, spinning Stefan and knocking Fabi off course. Everyone else magically passed. Senna galloped off in the lead, but Keke, who announced his quasi-retirement this weekend, broke to the lead on lap 2. On that first lap, Derek Warwick's Brabham leaped from 20th to 11th, Andrea de Cesaris Minardi from 23rd to 14th. This would be a race of pit stops and lead changes, 7 in all. All the front runners stopped once on the 4-mile circuit of occasionally 200 miles per hour, except Nelson Piquet. He pitted twice, and that extra time for new rubber more than made up for with extra speed on the track. He would win. Others like Senna and the McLarens wanted to stop, but the mileage was so close they couldn't afford it. Fact is, second and third running Rosberg and Prost didn't finish the final circuit, and Senna ran out maybe 100 yards past the finish line, completely contorting the final standings, which read Piquet, Senna, big benefactor again, Nigel Mansell, Arnoux, and then Rosberg and Prost. No change in points, just some tightening among that fleetest 5.
The international port city of Portland, Oregon played host to an international field of machines last weekend when the IMSA Camel GT cars came calling. Gary Lee has the story.
3 abreast, the GTPs headed for the first turn with the 52 Vet of Cyril Vandermeer leading the Nissan of pole setter Jeff Brabham and the 14 Porsche of Al Holbert. Whitney Gantz in the 45 Buick Hawk ran into problems on the first lap and found himself off course. John Andretti in the 18 BMW pulled off, ending his day early. The Vet, which usually leads with ease, could not shake the Nissan, with Brabham catching Vandermeer in traffic and passing on the front stretch. Early pit stops had Bell in first in the second Lowenbrow car. As the Vet slowed for its stop and driver change, the Jag and BMW moved by. Brabham brought the Nissan in for fuel, tires, and a clean windshield, and only dropped to third on the leaderboard. Holbert had the lead until his stop, giving the top spot to the Jag. The scheduled stop for fuel and a driver change, the Jag gave the lead back to Jeff Brabham in the Nissan, with Holbert in second. Late in the race, Camel light leader Bob Earl blew the engine, giving the lead and the win to the 63 Jim Downing car. By this time, the Vet with Doc Bundy at the wheel began its adventure. First Doc spins in turn 1 after being blocked by a slower car. Next Doc is rammed in the rear by the Probe and spins again, dropping from 4th to 8th. Brabham in the Nissan maintained the lead until the last lap. That's when he headed for the pits for a drink of fuel. The stop dropped Brabham from 1st to 3rd and gave Al Holbert the win, his 45th in IMSA competition, followed closely by Bob Tullius in the 44 Jag. 4th was the BMW of Watson and Hobbs, and 5th, the Probe of Lynn St. James and Tom Gloy. In the GTO-GTU race earlier in the day, Scott Pruitt teamed with Bruce Jenner to win the race. Pruitt dropped out early in his own car, but took over the Jenner car during the scheduled stop. Second was Willie T. Ribbs in the 77 Camaro. The GTU class saw number 38 Roger Mandeville lead the race until his engine blew, giving the top spot to number 55 Bob Earl, who was hounded all day by number 75 Tom Kendall. Earl maintained the lead to cruise to the win, with Kendall second to add to his already large points lead.
You can see this race here on ESPN Saturday, August 9th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Champion spark plug sedans, as usual, part of the IMSA Carnival, and they produced a new winner. This would also be the first win for a Honda Acura in this division. Usual winner Cal Choquette won the skirmish into the first turn, but you know that saying about winning the battle and losing the war? Well, Doug Peterson is the general who will determine the terms of this treaty. Former Trans Am driver Phil Curran worked his way through the pack, off course, but does get second. Amos Johnson nailed third, Tommy Archer was fourth, and oh yeah, brother Bobby, he dropped out of this one.
This Kelly American Challenge race at Portland, one of 2 this past week, won by females. Patty Moe started third, but quickly took the lead, as Dick Danielson and Irv Hare went for second. Irv, winner of 5 in a row, hit the brakes a little late and went off course. But next lap, he made the pass the way it should be done, grabbed second, and finished there. Clay Young drove his Firebird to 4th. Another female, Robin Dallenbach, was 5th. A couple of interesting competitors in this race. Actor Lorenzo Lamas was 9th, and veteran Herschel McGriff drove the Skull Bandit to a 14th. Earlier last week, live on ESPN, Bev Griffiths won the 50-lap midget feature at the Indianapolis Speedrome. her first feature win ever and the first female feature winner ever for the United States Auto Club.
When we return, Halsmer's Merkur win is no yawner.
But it's time in Super V's. Stay with us. Trans Am drivers are among the busiest in motorsports. Their third consecutive race headlined a series of events at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Starting order of the Sunday 100-miler determined by the finish of a Saturday race. Pete Halsmer, Wally Dalemac Jr., and Jim Miller were the first three finishers. Ford hadn't won in this series since the first race of the year at Riverside with Scott Pruitt in a Capri. Halsmer was determined to change that. Wally and his Camaro have the most wins this season, 3. Greg Pickett in the experimental V6 had 2 consecutive victories going into this one, but an engine problem on lap 5 stopped the string. Among the other dropouts, Elliott Forbes Robinson in the Buick Somerset and Jim Miller in another Protofab Chevy. A late yellow that took 4 laps to remove a stalled car bunched the field, but Halsmer held off the Dalemac Challenge to win his first Trans Am race ever. For Jack Roush, the first win for his Merkur.
It's been a long time. You know, we won a lot of races last year, and this team has worked probably harder this year than they did last, and they really deserved it. Some of the guys stayed up all night last night. The little cars have fought us hard, but they're brand new cars, and they brought them home today. I'm really proud for the team, and of course, Pete has done a fantastic job. He's had a lot of years of experience with turbocharged cars, and that's helped us a lot sorting the car out.
The top 5 finishers, Halsmer, Dallenbach, Chris Neifel, Jim Fitzgerald, and Mike Miller.
In Super V's, Didier Tays had won 2 in a row and half of the 6 races run. Didier qualified near the front and contested with season-long foe Steve Brent. A green light incident wounded many of the top runners, including Mike Groff, who went in tied for the points lead, and Dennis Vitolo here. Bren came up with yet another way to not win. He and Tays banged wheels, each got flats, pitted, and then returned, but out of it. Steve's brother Kerry, or is it the other way around, began carving his way methodically through the field. He started 8th, and through incident-free driving, winds up 2nd. Californian, but many are, David Kudrave must be a candidate for the most improved this year. He was 3rd, and Gary Rubio, who started 4th, finished there. But the winner for the first time this year was 2nd starting Thomas Knapp. This is the man who flattened the Pro Sports 2000s last year, once winning 5 in a row. Super B points again this year, one of the world's best contests. The top 5 within a race win, and Knapp lurking in the nearby shadows.
The East Coast Atlantic race at Road America really wasn't much of a contest. Canadian Scott Goodyear crossed the border and crossed the line well ahead of his nearest challenger. Most of the good racing was behind Goodyear for 2nd between Michael Greenfield and Ted Prappus. Prappus was driving the same car that he crashed and later won in last weekend in British Columbia. He was 2nd across the line but was disqualified for illegal fuel. An appeal ended in his favor and he was awarded 2nd. Bill O'Connor and James Opperman rounded out the top 5. Paul Dallenbach, whose brother Wally was 2nd in Trans Am, drives the Red Roof Inn sponsored car in this series. No top 5 finish, but he's only 19. Goodyear, the series points leader, has won 3 of 4 this year. By the way, he left right after this for Saint-Jovite near Montreal, where he won the next day in the Rothmans Porsche Series.
The originally $10,000 a copy Sports Renault division continues as one of SCCA's most popular. This race limited to 40 cars. St. Augustinian Scott Lagasse has been kingpin this year and had the field in the palm of his hand until the very last lap. Apparently glancing in the mirrors, checking for challengers as tires are going away, he drives off course. Georgia's Ben Burrell is the recipient of 2nd, his teammate Tom McCabe 3rd. The winner, one of this season's emerging stars, California's Ray Kahn. Lots of rides in a variety of cars and a winner in at least 3 kinds, twice so far in Sports Renault.
The final outcome of the VW Cup race didn't reflect in any way the order that they crossed the finish line. Team B, Mark and Father Les led all the way and crossed the line 1st and 2nd, but were disqualified for being underweight. 3rd place finisher Roberto Lorenzuti, number 19, was 3rd across the line, but he was given a time penalty and dropped to 6th. Finally, after all the penalties, Al Salerno was declared the winner. 2nd was Alistair Oak, the series points leader, who had won the last 2 straight.
In our next segment, the miner strikes gold and drags,
while this prospector's chances are up in the air. The annual NHRA drag meet in Denver is appropriately named the Mile High Nationals. Bob Bob Glidden hadn't won an NHRA so far this year. Butch Leal and Warren Johnson had won the last 5 races. Johnson's in the near lane, Glidden in the far lane, and Bob does a 792, 174.72 miles an hour, and edges Johnson for the title. The top fuel final was anticlimactic. Eddie Hill, who had defeated Joe Amato in the semis, couldn't fire, and Larry Minor has an easy win. It's Larry's first national title since the Cajun Nationals in 1983. Kenny Bernstein is up against Mark Oswald in the funny car finals. It was 6 years ago here that Bernstein's performance gained him the Budweiser sponsorship that he still carries. His quest for 3 titles in a row, however, is stopped as Oswald is 1/100th of a second faster, although Kenny's reaction time is 1/1000th of a second better.
Another non-oval racing activity, but this one's on the highway. NASCAR's Winston Cup racing teams are conducting what they call the Hayride 500 this weekend. On their only weekend off between now and October, team members will drive their haulers to Columbus, Ohio, fill them up with hay, and transport it to the drought-distressed farms in the southeast. Meanwhile, some on-track racing last weekend in the Midwest.
The Kings Royal at Eldora Speedway in Rossburg, Ohio is perhaps the richest paying race of its size anywhere. 40 laps on a half-mile track and $50,000 to win. Jack Hewitt didn't start, but neither did this B-feature crash require any medical attention. Doug Wolfgang, the defending champion, and Dave Blaney ran first and second for the first part of the race. Also wheel-to-wheel, Sammy Swindell and Steve Kinzer. But King Steve I, he won the first Kings Royal 2 years ago, dropped out. Then both Wolfgang and Blaney suffered tire problems and lost positions while in the pits. Donnie Kreitz Jr. passed Jack Haudenschild, and the 24-year-old Kreitz, in his 4th year of racing, ascended to the King's throne with his royal attendants and $52 grand.
Butch Miller, another great weekend, this time the ARTGO Super Nationals in Wisconsin. He won 2 75-lappers on Saturday at Dells Motor Speedway, and here at Capital Sunday, he won twin 50s. The overall second-place finisher, 36, Joe Shear, who's second in ARTGO points. Points leader, Dick Trickle, failed to finish either 50-lapper. A $1,000 bounty is on Miller's head. Rusty Wallace and others will try to collect that August 5th at Wisconsin International.
Now here's this week's trivia question. It took 14 years for the first July double winner at Talladega. Who was it? A, Bobby Allison, B, Dale Earnhardt, C, Darrell Waltrip, D, Ron Bouchard, or E, David Pearson. Larry will have the answer in a moment.
The answer to this week's trivia, Allison has 1 July Talladega win, Earnhardt 2, but he wasn't the first. Bouchard's 81 win, his only career victory, and Pearson has never won this Midsummer Days Dream. But C, Waltrip broke the string of 13 different victors, winning in 79 and 82.
Chip Hanauer won the URC race last weekend in Tri-Cities, Washington, and round 4 of the Outboard Grand Prix was also held there. 70,000 spectators were on the Columbia River to watch Bill Siebold qualify fastest at over 114 miles an hour. But in the 40-lap feature, his engine quit. Welshman Jonathan Jones then took over and cruised to his first series victory. Second was West German Michael Werner, despite a 1-lap penalty for jumping the start. He now has the series points lead as the crews head for St. Louis on the weekend of August 9th and 10th.
Next week on Speedweek, the Michigan 500 IndyCar race. IMSA at Sears Point and USAC Sprints at the half mile in Terre Haute, Indiana. I'm Larry Newber.
And I'm Bob Jenkins. We leave you this week with more from the IMSA race in Portland.
Speedweek has been brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road.